through that by really drawing on your reserves, innovating, extrapolating, multiplying all at the same time. The fact that we could produce more, we could distribute better, we could handle imports. So I think that there's a lot here which needs to be studied. And at the end of the day, I think in many ways, it's also a story of leadership.
Thank you. Could I now turn to the Honorable Health Minister of Sri Lanka, Dr. Rambukwela? And sir, could I ask you the same question? How did Sri Lanka and how did the government of Sri Lanka handle not merely the public health crisis of the COVID problems, but also the attendant economic crisis which most of our countries went through? Honorable Health Minister of Sri Lanka, sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. The Honorable Dr. Jaishankar, the Minister of External Affairs, Honorable Finance Minister of Bhutan, the President of PIC and Dr. Vijay Keller, Vice President, PIC Ambassador Gautam Bambavali, and the convener of Asian Economic Development 22. Our friends over here, well, your question is very timely because the pandemic had always had impact in the complete economic system in the whole world. We were not isolated. I think whole world has impacted, and if you look at all the indicators for all the institutions that deal with indicators, have said that we will have a minus growth rate right across the world. So we will not be sort of singled out in that. We'll be also part and parcel of that whole affair. But having said that, I think financially there are huge impacts because right at the beginning, this was completely, totally unexpected. All our budgets had no provisions for this. Taking in terms of economic impact, and then also the provision of the various affected people were an issue for us. However, we managed to cut down on certain infrastructure or certain areas, and then also gave priority to welfare sector, which was needed at that point in time. We had some serious concerns with regard to getting the vaccine. 7.8 billion people across the 194 countries all over the world, I think, was fishing out to get the vaccines. And I think we must extend our gratitude to India. Particularly the first 500,000 vaccines came from there as a form of a donation. We have had the experience. We in fact ordered something like 12 million, but the serum company had a problem, I think, there. So India came out to assist us in a big way at the initial stages. So there were certain delays, in fact, due to the, I suppose, the demand and supply and demand. And as Dr. Jaishankar very clearly mentioned, we didn't know the requirement of mask even, or the PP kits, or the personal protective kits. So I must extend a big thank you to the health staff of Sri Lanka, because with all these risks, none of the members of our health staff, starting from the consultants to the laborer, they never left the hospitals, or they took up the challenge with the minimum kind of resources, because we were not prepared. And gradually we managed to get into the vaccination. Right now we are quite happy with the vaccination. Vaccination, the first and the second dose, we have almost got 100% out, 98% to 100% on some. Third one, also we are just passing 50%. The curves are favorable, but economic impact is there. So we really didn't know at that point of time as to how to make provisions for it. But we are getting assistance from many areas. And our neighbor, I must again mention our neighbor, the India is always at hand and then have been helping us throughout, right? So as far as we are concerned, we are managing. And I think one thing that I must mention very specifically, our home management thing has been recognized by all over the world, and the WHO, I think, they made a special remark on that because our facilities were, when the pandemic started, we had only 2 labs available. We had only about 3 or 4 beds, ICU beds, which we ran into now about 700. We have now about 40 laboratories, and then we have various other matters to check the variants of like the Delta to Omicron. So we have moved forward, very much from where we were to manageable and completely take over control over it. The home management system, because we had the experience from all over the world where people flocked into hospitals, and the hospitals, how the hospitals had a challenge of managing affairs. So we immediately did the home-based activity, and with the SMS, within half an hour, each home was visited by one of the officers of the area, and that gave a lot of confidence. And we now, last week, we hit the 150,000 people who were treated at homes, and then only one unfortunate case where we had 1 death, and only 1,400 required hospitalization. And that was a great achievement. So that is how we managed it. If, I mean, I won't imagine, it's dreadful to imagine the 150,000 coming into the hospitals. It would have been a disaster and a, total nightmare. So that's where we manage our affairs. Economic wise, I think we are having problems mid-term and long term. I'm sure that we are having a constant discussions and trying to manage the activities of economic activities. Yeah, that's where we stand at the moment.
Thank you so much. And if I could now turn to Linpo Namgyet Sering, the Honorable Finance Minister of Bhutan, and ask him a similar kind of question of how the Royal Government of Bhutan, how Bhutan has handled both the public health aspects as well as the economic aspects of the COVID crisis. Linpo, the floor is yours, please.
Thank you, Your Excellency, Ambassador Gautam, for this very exciting opportunity. And I would like to again thank His Excellency Dr. S. Jaishankar as a host minister, Minister of External Affairs, for giving us this very good opportunistic platform to share our experience. And I join my colleague Minister of Health from Government of Sri Lanka to share some of our experience from a public health aspect, as well as the mitigation that we have put in place to respond to this pandemic economically. On the public health aspect, I think the experiences were not that different, except that Bhutan has not experienced a full-blown outbreak, which we actually don't expect as a landlocked country first, and secondly, with given a lot of constraints with our human resources and the resources. So in that sense, I think in Bhutan, from the public health front, I think as much as I'm concerned, I'm glad to share that we had imposed one of the most strictest containment protocols and norms in place. Upon the detection of the first case back in March 2020, we have immediately imposed we have immediately suspended the arrival of the international tourists in the country, closed the international borders. We have also established national and regional COVID task forces, which are supported by the incident command offices in all the districts and sub-district level. So indeed, we were on the footing, but the sad part is that we were not so sure about, unaware of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, and that's the case elsewhere in the world. But I think as we moved on, I think we had to again impose a mandatory 21 days strict quarantine, and the global standard set by WHO actually requires the country to have a maximum of 14 days quarantine, but we have sticked on having 21 days quarantine with the free expenses being paid by the government, and we still continue that 21 days quarantine for the international arrivals. We have also imposed, I think, a country, as some of our neighboring countries were actually having a tough time with our outbreaks. I think we had actually had a good lead time before we experienced a full-blown community transmission, but cases were very, very minimal. So we have started zoning the country into red, and as per the WHO definition, especially the bordering districts along the international border lines were graded as a red district. So we have also imposed a 7 days mandatory quarantine for domestic travelers who are traveling from high risk districts to the low risk districts, and thousands travels every day. And that the quarantine costs were also being met by the government just to ensure that their livelihood is also protected at the same time, when we actually give a lot of emphasis on protecting lives. So I think a lot of I would call it a gold standard kind of a protocol in our own term, and this has really helped us to contain the spread of the virus. And as the distinguished panelist must be well aware that His Majesty, our beloved King, in the forefront of this battle against the pandemic, has actually mobilized almost 25,000 uniformed volunteers. We call it DESUPs. So if I translate in English, that's called the Guardian of Peace. So basically, this group of volunteers have actually aided the country during the nationwide lockdowns, as well as any kind of a disaster. So this has become very handy and very instrumental in our country's response towards this pandemic. And indeed, when we embarked on this our fight against this pandemic, I think the country has really set a very big objective that we want to ensure and prioritize lives over livelihood. So basically, livelihood was also not really undermined, but I think at this point in time, in order to ensure there's a sustained livelihood, we have almost 47,000 plus individuals who are laid off, especially from the service sectors. And these individuals were currently being taken care of with a monthly the income support from His Majesty's relief measures. So His Majesty has done so much so that he has even sacrificed his own personal saving to meet the monthly installment, monthly income support for the laid off staffs. And now the numbers has actually crossed 55,000, and 55,000 in a country's context is a big number actually. So on the economic front, I think before I touch on the economic front, I would like to again reiterate my sincere thanks to government and people of India for actually sparing us and prioritizing Bhutan with the 500,000 doses of Covishield. That has actually set a tone for our accelerated drive of vaccination. And currently we have achieved over 95% vaccination coverage above 12 years of age. And coming March, first week, we will be rolling out the vaccination for children between 5 to 11 years. So from there, I think we are gradually moving towards more relaxations. And we thought we are very much optimistic. And the situation has proven that vaccination is very effective with the ongoing spread and ravage caused by the Omicron variant. So I think on the vaccination front, on the prevention front, I think we're doing fairly well. So lastly, on the economic front, I think a lot of measures were put in place. We have actually implemented an economic contingency plan back in 2020, focusing on three broad sectors like agriculture, tourism. In the absence of tourism, we're taking this as an opportunity to leverage and develop some newer tourism products to make it world ready during the post-pandemic. And we have also embarked on building skills to meet growing employment the demand during the pandemic. So I think a lot of things have taken place. And especially on the monetary and fiscal measures, we have, just like in India, we also had put in place the national credit guarantee schemes as a counter-cyclical measure to support the CSIs in startups, and it is responding quite well. And yet again, I think His Majesty has actually sacrificed his own personal savings, and to the extent that he has also floated his own personal share in the market and sold off all shares to meet to help the individuals with the loan account to lessen the debt burdens on the individual through interest subsidy. So I think there are a lot of measures being placed. And having said that, I don't mean to say that while we are focusing on protecting lives, livelihood is not impacted. I think livelihood is impacted elsewhere in the world, and we're no exception to that. But I think we're trying our best with a lot of mitigation measures, and we're hopeful that that with the impressive vaccination coverage, with the new technological advancement in our region, especially led by a country like India, I think we see a lot of opportunity there. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Linpo. Let me circle back to the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India. And since the theme of our conference is we're looking forward towards a post-pandemic world, and especially how we can foster resilient global growth as we move ahead, let me ask him, how important is international cooperation in fostering global growth? And particularly because we have ministers from our neighborhood, how important is the neighborhood in that process?
Sure, Gautam. Look, I'm actually speaking to you from Paris, where I'd come for an Indo-Pacific ministerial forum. And before that, the week before, I was in Australia for the Quad meeting. Now, I mentioned that to you because at any international gathering that I go to, and in my dealings with other foreign ministers, and during this COVID period, I've actually probably spoken to maybe about 125, something like that. That would be the number of conversations I would have had with my counterparts. Expectation of what we can do on the vaccine front, what we can do on the medicine front, what we can do on the digital front, a sense that today India has something to bring to the table, and that's something which is necessary for a global recovery. Now, in fact, if you were to look in global terms, there are really, I would say, two baskets. In physical supply chain terms, a kind of a resilient, reliable supply chain concern. And you can also see that expressed, for example, in the recent upgrade we have done in our relationship with the UAE. The fact that they, after the COVID experience, have a greater sense of trust in the fact that India will step up. And on the digital side with trust and transparency. But coming to the neighborhood, because that's an important message I want to send with my two colleagues on the screen. Look, we keep saying neighborhood first. First must deliver, especially in times of difficulty. We have seen livelihoods devastated. Some countries, obviously, those who have a greater international exposure, like Sri Lanka, have had to take a higher degree of a hit. Perhaps, everybody's taken a hit. Maybe just in the case of Bhutan, it's very clearly, because of tourism and other factors, the problems that a country like Sri Lanka faces. There are still countries which are going through the health problems. Even now we are supplying vaccines to Afghanistan and to Myanmar. So the message I have is, this is a time for India, will be a reliable friend. This is the time for us to demonstrate that neighborhood first really delivers, not just in terms of lines of credit, but also in terms of investments. In terms of, if Indian tourists go out, if Indian business goes out, if even the Indian government, if there are investments we can make, which will shore up other people's economy and, expand employment, this is really what they need at this moment. And I can assure them that India will rise to that occasion.
Let me turn to Dr. Rambokwela. Sir, how important is international cooperation for fostering growth as we move ahead? And how do you respond to the message very clearly delivered by the Honorable External Affairs Minister of India that India is going to be standing by your side in this process? Dr. Rambokwela, sir.
That's the biggest pillar that we have to stand by. In a fallout situation, I think Dr. Jaishankar, I must extend my thanks, not only me, my president, Prime Minister, the parliament, the entire people of Sri Lanka is ever thankful to you, because last night we had a 3-hour discussion, including the governor and the treasury secretary and president, myself and a few other ministers. And the entire thing was centered around us Indians' assistance with regard to the fuel and various other things. I think I must be very frank about it. I'm not ashamed to say that it was most welcome, and then it was discussed in detail. Where we have a certain crisis, I think we manage in the food crisis or other food activities. We are having a serious concerns about the fuel, and I think India has come in a big way to assist us. And we're looking at short-term, mid-term, and long-term. As Dr. Jaishankar, Minister, External Minister, as he expressed, we're looking at investments as well. As you know, Sri Lanka was looking at, we were targeting 3 million tourists, out of which majority was Indian tourists, and that had sort of slowed down a bit, and then our income we estimated, or rather we experienced last year or years before, is around $5 billion, which has come down by about 70%. Now that's one area. The other area is the foreign employment, which brought us about 6 billion, 6.5 billion. That has come down again like 50%. So we have a foreign currency crunch, and we are looking at various other activities, and then also looking at being self-sufficient in certain areas. Of course, those are mid-term and long-term. And also that we have invited India to invest. And then I think we are looking at the port investment, the petroleum investment, and various other areas. And India has always been very helpful to us in terms of not only just assistance by giving us 500,000 doses of vaccine, but much more to it on a permanent sense of investment and kind of thing. So once again, I take this opportunity to thank. Worldwide, I suppose it is the same thing, but Sri Lanka is a very small economy. And so therefore, when we have a situation of this nature, we need assistance. So it was a different experience with tsunami. Tsunami was only few countries were affected. So there were so many other countries who could extend their hand to us and then sort of support us to overcome within no time. But here it's the whole world is affected. So they are also having their quota of issues to sort it out. A country like India dealing with 1.3 billion people, sort of is something that needs commendment, as to how they can manage with all that. And then suddenly you had a surge of victims and then kind of infected people. So with all that, you have not forgotten the neighbors once again. And then I think our relationship between the neighbors are quite good, and then with the new government. And I know personally the President, His Excellency Gotabaya Rajapaksa, spoke to head of state a few times with regard to the vaccines and various other assistance, and never a time that it was turned down. I think it was always accommodated. So we, as I've told you, we are not trying to hide things or trying to avoid things. We are definitely having a economic issue. We are trying to solve that out. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Let me turn to Linpo Namgyet Sering, the Honorable Finance Minister of Bhutan, and ask him the same question. about international cooperation and its importance. Unfortunately, Linpo, we are running out of time. So if I could limit you to just 2 minutes, please. Thank you so much for your understanding.
Thank you so much, Ambassador. I think indeed I might not take that much also, because basically whatever I want to hear. So as always, India has always been on side, as well as our neighboring countries. And His Excellency S. Jaishankar has already made a mention reinforcing India's continuous support and commitment to the neighbors. And Bhutan, as you know, that we being a largely an import-driven country, and our trading partners being almost 90% being with India. So during the pandemic, we are yet again very grateful to India for your precious gift of 500,000 doses of vaccine, which actually have made a lot of difference in our country. And of course, as I've mentioned, we being a import-driven country, despite the challenges that you have in your own context, but you have ensured that there's a seamless trading supply of goods without any hindrances, even during the height of the pandemic. So that itself is a noble gesture that we will always bear in our mind. We will always be grateful to India. And one thing that I want to say is, Bhutan being an aggregate-based society, a country, so we want to, in presence of His Excellency S. Jaishankar here, we want to reiterate that still now it is being facilitated, but further we would like to seek a continuous support of the export of RNR, the produced from Bhutan to India. So there are a lot of issues with the implementation of GST in India, and there are a lot of phytosanitary requirements. So basically, there will be a lot of, I see a lot of the areas of collaborating between two countries and facilitate those the issues. And during the post-pandemic, of course, as raised by the Sri Lanka as well as Honorable Minister from India, we need to have an enhanced investment, and balance of payment is a critical issue for a country like Bhutan. So indeed, we are very grateful to yet again with India because of the soft arrangement that we have between our central government and RBI. So I think a lot of issues has been resolved, but furthermore, we see a lot of opportunities to have a collaborative move forward to ensure there is a resilient recovery from this during the post-pandemic. And at the same time, with the digital interconnectedness of the world, with the digitalization, we see that a lot of opportunities that we can engage more and more with our neighboring countries in the region, as well as beyond the region in the world. So I would like to thank the distinguished panelists, and especially with India, for all your generous support. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. That we are totally out of time, and let me just conclude by thanking all three of the honorable ministers for being with us at this first part of the inaugural session of the Asia Economic Dialogue 2022. Thank you, and back to our anchor Shilpa. Thank you all very much.